They had a camera deep under this oil rig, and they spotted this thing with these insane long appendages.
Robert Kensington descended 180 feet beneath the Poseidon rig, expecting a routine dive. But what he saw would change everything. Robert Kensington had been working offshore for nearly 18 years by the time this dive happened. He was 46, certified through the Association of Diving Contractors International, and had logged thousands of hours inspecting subsea pipelines across the Gulf. The job that morning was routine by every industry standard, but nothing prepared him for what he saw. It was a scheduled midwinter inspection of a feeder pipeline connected to the Poseidon Seven platform, about 40 miles off the Louisiana coast. February seas were calm, visibility acceptable, and nothing in the briefing suggested complications. Robert entered the water at 9:12 a.m. from the support vessel Maribel 1, assigned to check a corrosion-prone section of pipe running along the seabed at roughly 180 feet. His surface supervisor, Alan Price, monitored his descent from the control room while recording audio and biometric data, which was standard procedure. The water temperature dropped past 120 feet, which was normal for that time of year. Robert reported stable pressure, clean visuals, and no obstructions during the first phase of the dive. At 176 feet, he reached the pipeline. He began the inspection exactly as trained, moving left to right, checking weld seams, anchor points, and the outer coating for fractures. For about 6 minutes, nothing stood out. Then something changed when the background noise that divers come to rely on began to fade. Normally, even at that depth, there is sound, distant movement, subtle current shifts, equipment hum, marine life brushing past. Robert later said it was not that the ocean became silent all at once, but that familiar sound stopped returning. His own breathing sounded louder inside the helmet, sharper than usual. He reported the change to the surface, describing it as a drop in ambient activity. Alan acknowledged it, logged the note, and told him to continue. From a technical standpoint, there was still no reason to abort. Less than a minute later, Robert noticed movement beyond the pipeline, about 20 to 30 feet out. At first, it appeared as a distortion, like light bending incorrectly. Visibility at that depth was limited, but this was not silt or debris. It moved against the current and did not behave like any fish or mammal he recognized. Robert had encountered sharks, manta rays, even deep water squid before, but this was different. The shape held position, then shifted slowly, revealing a faint glow, not a flash, not bioluminescence as he understood it, but a steady geometric brightness that seemed structured rather than organic. As he adjusted his lights toward it, his helmet radio began to crackle. Interference is not uncommon offshore, especially near heavy infrastructure, but this was irregular. The static rose and fell in short bursts, almost timed with the movement of the glowing shape. Alan asked him to repeat his last transmission. Robert tried to respond, but his own voice came back delayed and distorted. His biometric readings showed a rising breathing rate at that point, which the crew would later review. Still, Robert did not panic or bolt. He stayed in place, maintained position, and continued to observe. What unsettled him most was not the shape itself, but the way it adjusted when he moved. Each time he shifted his lights or angle, the object repositioned slightly, as if correcting for his line of sight. After nearly 30 seconds of this, Robert reported a direct request to abort the inspection. He did not cite equipment failure or physical distress. He said only that something was operating in the work zone and that he could not safely continue. On the surface, Alan hesitated. Aborting a dive had consequences, cost, and paperwork, but something in Robert's voice convinced him to approve the ascent. As Robert began to pull away from the pipeline, the glow dimmed. The last thing his camera picked up was a faint shift in the water where the shape had been, then nothing at all. As Robert began his controlled ascent, another detail became impossible to ignore. The water around him had gone unnaturally quiet. Offshore divers are trained to notice sound because sound is one of the few constants underwater. Pumps hum from the rig above. Thrusters from support vessels travel down the water column. Marine life produces low, steady noise, even at depth. At 180 feet near an active platform, complete quiet should not happen. Yet Robert reported exactly that. His dive log later noted loss of ambient return, a phrase divers sometimes use when sound seems absorbed rather than echoed. His helmet microphone picked up nothing except his breathing and the faint hiss of oxygen flow. Even the pipeline beneath him seemed to vanish into the background, as if the water itself had thickened. This silence did not occur all at once. It narrowed in, like a perimeter closing. Robert could still hear himself, still hear static from the surface, but the space around him felt sealed off. Years later, he would say the silence made it harder to judge distance and movement. Without background cues, depth perception changes, reaction time slows, mistakes happen. What unsettled him further was the sense that the silence was not passive. As he moved upward, the quiet seemed to move with him, remaining consistent for several seconds before slowly releasing. When the first distant hum of surface equipment returned, it felt abrupt, like stepping out of a closed room. During the ascent, the radio interference continued. Alan Price asked him twice to confirm pressure readings. Robert answered both times, but the delay between question and response varied. The dive computer later showed no fault in transmission equipment. Post-dive checks found no corrosion, no loose wiring, and no water ingress in the helmet unit. This is where accounts begin to diverge, depending on who is telling the story. Robert himself never claimed to hear voices or words. What he described instead were patterns. He said the glow he saw earlier did not flicker randomly. It shifted in intervals: bright, dim, pause, short, long, short. He compared it to coded signaling, similar to how divers use torch flashes to communicate in low visibility. Experienced divers know that some deep-sea animals use light, electricity, or pressure changes to interact with their environment. Bioluminescent organisms flash to confuse predators or attract prey. Electric rays generate fields, but these behaviors are reactive. They respond to threat or opportunity. Robert felt what he saw was neither. He did not believe the light was meant to attract him or scare him away. It appeared calibrated, restrained, as if it was being tested. The object did not rush him when his heart rate increased. It did not retreat when he pulled back. It adjusted, and that adjustment is what stayed with him. Back on the Maribel 1, technicians reviewed the camera feed. The footage showed a brief distortion and a faint glow, but nothing clear enough to identify. The company classified the incident as a visibility anomaly compounded by diver stress. Officially, that was the end of it. But unofficially, several crew members admitted something else bothered them. The timestamp showed that during the quietest period of Robert's dive, surface sonar recorded a brief drop in background noise as well. It lasted only seconds, not long enough to trigger alarms, but long enough to be noticed by those watching closely. After the dive was aborted, the incident reopened some other conversations that had never fully gone away on the Poseidon contracts. Marcus Hale was one name that came up almost immediately. He had been a saturation diver assigned to the same pipeline route 18 months earlier, working under a different supervisor but at nearly the same depth range. Officially, Marcus was listed as lost due to equipment failure during a night operation. His tether had been recovered. His helmet camera had not. What made his case linger was the condition of the gear that surfaced. The umbilical line showed no tearing. The quick release was intact. His cutting tools were still clipped in place. There was no evidence of a panic ascent or entanglement. The final transmission from Marcus was routine, a confirmation of pressure readings, followed by silence. No distress call was ever logged. Veteran divers understand that the ocean does not need mysteries to be dangerous. Strong lateral currents can push a diver off task. Nitrogen narcosis can blur judgment. But in Marcus's case, none of the usual explanations really fit. He had passed medical checks, his gas mix was correct, and weather conditions were stable. Following Robert's incident, 2 other crew members admitted to reporting brief communication failures during earlier dives on the same stretch of seabed. In one case, a diver named Luis Moreno described losing audio for almost 20 seconds before it snapped back without explanation. In another, a helmet camera feed froze just long enough for the diver to later question whether he had seen movement that was not logged on video. Outside official reports, these stories tend to surface online. On professional forums and anonymous boards, divers share accounts of shadows that keep pace without closing distance, or lights appearing where there should be nothing but sediment and darkness. None of these posts offer proof. Most are dismissed or quietly deleted. What unsettles those who read them is how often the details overlap. The depth range, the silence, and the sense of something passing close, but never close enough to touch. Once Robert was back on deck, the change in him was immediate and noticeable. Divers usually come up shaken or relieved, depending on the job, but Robert was neither. He removed his helmet without speaking, sat on a storage crate near the dive control room, and asked for water. Alan Price later said Robert's hands were steady, but his focus was not. He kept looking past people, toward the open sea, as if waiting for something to surface. In the post-dive debrief, Robert refused to give specifics. He did not mention lights, shapes, or silence. He said only that the environment had become unsafe and unpredictable. Offshore supervisors are trained to push for clarity, but they are also trained to respect a diver's judgment when something feels wrong. Allen logged the incident as a voluntary abort due to unidentified subsea interference, a vague phrase that protected both the company and the diver. The next morning, Robert declined a return dive. This was unusual. He had never turned down work before. When asked privately if equipment failure was involved, he said no. When pressed on whether he felt medically unfit, he said he was fine. What he would not do was suit up again. Within 2 weeks, he submitted his resignation. No disciplinary action followed, but the departure raised eyebrows. Offshore diving is not a career people walk away from lightly. It pays well, and veterans like Robert are hard to replace. Yet he sold his gear, let his certifications lapse, and took a short-term job inspecting inland water facilities, work that kept him close to the surface. Life on land should have settled him, but it did not. He avoided large bodies of water. He stopped night swimming altogether. Friends noticed he became particular about silence, keeping radios on low volume, leaving televisions running at night. Privately, he admitted something else lingered. He had recurring dreams of descending without equipment, of light moving just outside his field of vision. The dreams were not violent. They were observational. He described them as being watched, not threatened. Years later, Robert maintained that whatever he encountered did not chase him out of fear. It changed the way he calculated risk. He said the ocean had always been dangerous, but now it felt aware. That shift, he explained, was enough to end a career. Years after Robert Kensington left offshore diving, his story remained difficult to classify. It never settled cleanly into the categories people prefer. It was not a documented discovery, but it also resisted being dismissed as a simple mistake. That uncertainty is what continues to keep the incident alive in diving circles, passed quietly between people who understand the environment well enough to know how rare true anomalies are. One explanation often raised is that Robert encountered a form of life not yet properly documented. Marine biologists acknowledge that many deep-sea species remain unidentified, particularly those living beyond regular human reach. Some organisms communicate using light, vibration, or electromagnetic signals rather than sound. Bioluminescence itself was once considered implausible until it was repeatedly observed. From that perspective, a slow-moving, light-emitting entity is not impossible, only unconfirmed. Still, skeptics point to the conditions of the dive. At depth, pressure alters perception. Even experienced divers can misinterpret scale, distance, and motion. The brain, deprived of familiar sensory references, fills in gaps. Under stress, patterns emerge where none exist. A shifting current, reflective sediment, or equipment interference could combine to produce something that feels purposeful without being so. What complicates Robert's case is that multiple systems showed irregularities at once: audio distortion without hardware failure, visual anomalies that did not register cleanly on camera, a temporary drop in background sonar noise at the surface. None of these alone prove anything. Together, they form a cluster that remains difficult to fully explain. Beyond individual encounters, there is the broader reality of the ocean itself. Scientists estimate that more than 80% of the world's oceans remain unexplored, particularly below 200 meters. Each year, remotely operated vehicles identify new species that defy previous assumptions about life's limits. Creatures have been found thriving near hydrothermal vents, surviving without sunlight, and using sensory systems humans barely understand. The deep is not empty. It is simply distant. That distance shapes human response. Divers are trained to manage fear, but fear does not disappear. It changes form. Many divers report a sensation of being observed during deep operations, even when nothing is visible. Psychologists describe it as a natural reaction to environments where escape routes are limited and awareness is reduced. The mind scans for threats constantly, sometimes inventing them. Robert does not reject that explanation outright. He has said that if his experience had been only emotional, he could have worked through it. What ended his career was the consistency of what he observed, the way it reacted, and the way it withdrew without chaos or aggression. To him, that suggested intent, not panic or randomness. In the end, no conclusion has been officially drawn. The dive was logged, the footage archived, the crew reassigned. Offshore operations continued. What remains is a question that sits uncomfortably between science and experience. Whether the encounter was an unknown intelligence or a rare alignment of environmental and psychological factors, it left a permanent mark. For those who work in the deep, that may be the most unsettling part. The ocean does not need to reveal its secrets to remind people how little of it they truly understand. What do you think? If humans have explored only a fraction of the ocean, Who is to say what else might be watching from below? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear them. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the following video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.